And next, I would like to invite Omar Mohsine onto the stage, please. Omar is coming, visiting us from the UN, and had such a trial to get here, so thank you for coming. I just get up your slides, so off you go.
I'm very thrilled to be here, and it's my first time in Ireland, so I'm very happy. And I didn't know what's the dress code in Ireland when you go to a place you don't know. So I saw one person with a tie, I don't know, four, so thanks for the solidarity. Maybe he left, he dropped the tie. That's not nice, I guess. Okay, so I think I have to drop this up. My name is Omar Mohsine. I work at the United Nations office. I have two hats. I work at the UN Office of Internal, the CIO's office, and then for the Office of Digital and Emerging Technologies. So take care of it, open source internally for the UN, but also some of the work we do with government and member states. So I'm here to talk to you about, I'm going to start with a story that started back in 1999. At the time we were entering a new millennium, so the time Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, had started by saying we're entering a new millennium, let's redesign the way we do international development, how we work together. And he came up with this MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. Raise your hand if you've ever seen these logos or heard about them. So these were at the time completely new because it just drive that instead of having every country having their own priorities or every country deciding what they should focus on, that we together as world we have one goal. And what was cool about it is at the time they said that this is not for the UN to do or any specific government, this is for all of us, really everybody. And then it was so successful at the time that, oh sorry, I forgot to mention, he said this is 15 years, it's not a forever. So in 2015 this has to stop, and then we have to see how we're doing. 2015, it stopped, and then member states came together, and then they said, okay, let's do more. This was a very big success. How can we add more and add more of the things that really impact every one of us? So they come up with a sustainable development goal. So if you're wondering why am I talking about this stuff in a technology conference, is that they decided, when they came up with this, that the only way, one of the only ways that we will get the SDGs to be delivered is technology. And without technology, none of these big, massive goals that really impact everyone. We're talking about feeding all the hunger in the world, stopping poverty, about health and education, would not be done without technology. And now, as we go even further, we say, not only it would not be done without technology, it would not be done without open source. Open source is what really brings everybody everywhere. And again, the first sentence when they designed, our government, all of you, all of us, when they came to the UN 2015, the first sentence is, this is not up to one government, one company, or one individual. This is all of us. And nothing is there to say that all of us better than open source. There's nothing that allows people to collaborate from everywhere than open source. And this collaboration is like at the DNA. This is what the UN was created 80 years ago when 50 countries came together, was that we will collaborate because not one of us, not one entity alone can achieve some of these big things. So I'm just here, a quote from the Secretary General, who set a target that we want to have 1 million digital champions, a quarter of which will be in Africa, working on these things. And again, open source is clearly the way we can go. So here are just why open source for us matters. Before getting there, I'm going to tell you a personal story. So I'm not like Sachiko or Gabriele or Claire. I've been in open source for decades. I'm very recent in this world. It started in 2018. I was leading a project, a finance project, where we wanted to build a software that tracked all the financing of terrorism. And at the time we wanted to build, we didn't know much about AI. We wanted to go through large data, and then we didn't have a lot of money or expertise. So at the time we worked with the Korean University of Busan. And they said that we would build it for you, and we have the exact perfect technology, and this is perfect. But then I spent 6 months doing an MOU. And we spent, in it, there was another hundreds of hours of meetings of lawyers, and again, lawyers, and then Korean language versus English language to get through an NDA. And then we did it, and we started the work, and it was amazing. And then at some point, there was a university in Dubai said, oh, we have this other module that would help it. And then it was like, no, I cannot do this again. And then I spoke in, I think it was one of the universities in the New York area, and then and somebody said, but why don't you make it open source? Then everybody can work on that, not just the universities. And this is our big, wow, we can get everybody, people from all sorts, collaborating together if we just open that thing. And then we looked at it as like, there's nothing confidential. If I had $1 every time at the UN somebody told me it's confidential, I'd be super rich. No, it's not confidential. Whatever you're told is not confidential, probably your data. So this is really for us, the collaboration, the community is really what defines open source. The transparency, that I can see what's in it. And that's what we're all about, this transparency, the security, the cost efficiency. We're broke, you know that. So cost efficiency is a really big thing for us. So this is some of the areas where we really believe that open source could be making a big difference. So where to start? Again, we came up with the open source strategy. So this is how was established in 2022. To get there, we defined those 3 areas that we want to work on. Policy, we're bureaucracy, like all of our governments. So it's hard. So we need to do rules and policies, and what is it that you open source, what is it that you don't open source, and so on. We did a lot of work on the culture, and then the technology. And this is really about the culture again. It's not in our DNA to open. We're a big government, like public administration, like all the governments. In the government, the DNA is to close. So really here, where do you start to change that culture? If you stop 10 people at the door of the UN and say, hi guys, what do you think about open source? Maybe 2 will say it's great, 90% will have no clue, and 10 will say it's horrible, or 8 will say it's horrible, we should not do it. So how can we at least move that it's 10% say it's great, or 15%? That would be amazing. So we did a lot of work on changing that culture. It's really, this is why I love coming to conferences like this, where I don't have to convince people that open source is good. Raise your hand if you don't think open source is good. Good, that was a trap, you'll be escorted out. So we really try to work on the culture, on getting people to understand that it is great for all of us to be able to do that. And we do that through multiple things. So this is something we started. It's called Mind the Gap, Mind the Open Source Gap, and where we just call dear UN staff everywhere, 60,000 UN staff around the world. We have this lecture, it's 3 hours. Come if you want, not if you want. And the first one we thought we were gonna have 20, 30 people, we get like 400. And now it's getting to 600. And we have amazing organization. And Sachiko spoke there, Sayed from Carnegie Mellon spoke there. So we get them amazing speakers. Sorry, Gabriel, these are the kind of things that start changing. But we just demystify open source, and we try to inspire. We did some other work. We created a community of practice. So everywhere there are those open source heroes. So you have to identify them. It's hard to get them. So we created a community. It's like all the open source heroes. Let's have a space where you can talk with each other. It's a safe space. You can say whatever you want. Now it's reaching 500 people in that community. So these are the kind of small things that we do to help really drive. And that number is increasing. And then now we're starting once a month. We do a community call where one of us come and tell us what they're doing in open source. So we have people from humanitarian, from economic, from the climate change to come and say, hey, we built that thing and it's been amazing. So this is the kind of thing we demystify. I just want to spot a second on this. I think, was it Claire talked about open source is really everywhere and it's global. We do this hackathon once a year, once every quarter, when we pick an SDG. It's called Open Source Software for SDGs. Say, dear world, help us. SDG for education, come fix some open source tools. So we did one. The first one was on Moodle, on SDG for education. I don't know if you know Moodle is an open source platform for training. And we said, UNICEF in India had an issue during COVID is that Moodle was not, the app didn't work well on when there's not a big network with the latency is not great. And then the group school, having multiple kids on Moodle doesn't work great. Help us improve it. we got incredible solution, but the winner was from Côte d'Ivoire. He couldn't speak, he was not an English speaker. He built a tool that he built a module that in the heart of COVID allowed each school in Côte d'Ivoire to create a virtual room where the instructor could talk to their student. The Moodle people in Australia, when they saw that, they right away integrated that module in their thing. And guess where he was doing in Côte d'Ivoire? He's an inspector in the Ministry of Education. This is like, for me, like we had him and it was a big goosebump moment, but it just really tells us that it is everywhere and anybody can help improve. He took a Moodle and then he completely, and now whatever he built is being used by everybody, is integrated in the distribution of Moodle. We do this thing called Reboot the Earth, where we also do hackathons, where we bring in, we tell, dear world, help us fix climate change. It's not only us, and we're having, we do that in site in a lot of countries, and we're starting a collaboration with Carnegie Mellon. Thank you. 2 minutes, oh my God. I'm Moroccan. There's one thing we beat the Italian, we could talk. So sorry, thanks for keeping this. Again, here I just want to say, just to talk about OSPO, the concept of OSPO and what it matters. So we are an organization of organizations. We're as complicated as most government. So what we said is that nobody will do it alone. And if we, the open source guys, we can work together, definitely not the lawyers or procurement or whatever other groups would be harder for them if we. So where we created a group with all the UN agencies are part of, and it was seamless. This was the easiest group to create. At the UN, you go through TORs and committees, endless to create whatever collaboration between different agencies. Because it's open source, that it was in our DNA. So we created this group of all the different OSPOs of the agencies working together, and we said, to get there, this is the first thing we're gonna start on. So the open source, let's define an open source license, let's define a software catalog, we build now our own code hosting platform and so on. And each agency led one of these tracks. So it was really, we just said, whatever you're building, don't build it alone, let's build it together. And it really was very easy that we get that. Let me move. I want to spend 30 seconds on this. The first thing we did as a group of the UN system agencies, OSPOs, is we defined what are our principles. What does it mean, open source for us? And we said, anybody, please, when you work with us, UN, you have to endorse these principles. And these principles took months to define because everybody agency get the input, but really the most important is the first one, is open by default. Now we're completely changing the narrative that by default, when we do a project, has to be open source. That's the default. Could be reasons, and you can justify, but we're gonna allow non-open source. Time is up. But the second one is contribute back. Third one is secure by design. And what happened is that more and more organizations in the open source world, when they start seeing this, are now endorsing them. So we're having, next month we'll be announcing OEFI, OSI, GNOME Foundation, Zendis, and so on. So this is something that, please scan the code if you want to also endorse the UN open source principle. We want as many of you as possible to endorse them so they become the standard. This is something coming very soon. Next month, we're creating a UN open source portal, so it's called opensource.un.org. Don't Google it, it's not there yet, it's gonna be there very soon, where it's gonna be one-stop shop for every project that the UN is doing that is open source, where you can click and then everybody can contribute. Last one, OSPO for Good. Thanks, Gabriele, for the shout out. So raise your hand if you've been OSPO for Good. Oh, wow. Amazing, thank you guys. So this is a conference that we do in New York. We'd love to have more of you there. Please Google it. So the dates are not 100% set. It's probably the week of June 16th, where we bring together, we realize that a lot of countries are now building their OSPOs. There's this big race on having a dedicated team that help bring open source in different parts of government. But what we're trying to do is here at first, help these countries build their OSPOs. So if you guys are thinking, and I think it's a great idea to have an OSPO, please don't do it on your own, happy to help you. But also what we try to do is connect the OSPOs. The Germany OSPO have the same problem that the Mexico OSPO who have the same problem than India OSPO. So we're trying to bring everybody together, have a platform where we have the foundations, the big tech, the government, everybody together. Stay tuned, it's gonna, announcement will be coming up soon. Would love to have all of you there. No. Thank you.